Today we're going to be looking at the second part of our writing narrative series, and that's stories that stick with us. So in this portion, we're going to be considering what type of powerful storytelling has really had a big impact on you. And one of the things that you can do is really perk up and pay attention to stories that influence you or impact you, stories that end up sticking with you. And one of the ways that you can do that is by thinking back to the stories that you really cared about when you were a child. So I'm going to flip here. This is an image of a very, very sad little kitty cat. Really, I just want to give it the largest hug and give it some milk and maybe a little ice cream if it's that type of cat. My parents' cat loves ice cream and they always feed him just a little bit when they're having some. But I've chosen this image because it really encapsulates for me one of the things that as a child really stuck with me, and that was like any stories about animals, especially stories about kitties that fell upon hard times, were some of the ones that just really touched my emotions and stuck with me. These intense scenes where cats were perhaps out on the street and you had someone taking in that cat and taking care of that cat. And that moment of connection between that person and the compassion and the pity that they felt for the feline that they had crossed their path. That is one of the things that really stuck with me. So it's that moment of great need, it's that moment of vulnerability, it's that moment, also that connection to animals is something that really stuck with me from a lot of my childhood reading. And then it also is this moment. Really just the way that you have the compassion showing up on the part of the audience, this pity for the cat, but oftentimes, I think in all of the ones I read, the cat wouldn't be left alone, wouldn't be left out in the cold, and you have these moments that are immediately followed by the welcoming home of the kitty or the finding a new home. And so one of the things that I might do is if I wanted to sit down and write, I could really tap into, I could really use some of the way that that element of great sadness, that element of pity, that element of compassion, that element of being without a home and then finding a home and belonging and feeling connected to that that we see in some of those stories are some of the parts of it that are perhaps powerful. And they might be some that I want to draw on as I start writing. Another way that you can do that is to think of some of the stories, and that could be books that you've read, it could be short stories you've read, it could also be movies you've seen or a television episode you've seen. It could be something that's weird and silly and you wouldn't even think about that, but it has really stuck with you. There's a lot of ways that you can look at that, and one of the great things you can do is focus in on something that is an example of really good storytelling. And we find that, I contend, in the Pixar movie Up. So the first few minutes of the film are all done without sound, insofar as it doesn't have dialogue, and instead we just get this lovely background music. It is also some of the most intense storytelling that Pixar has done to date. I've given you a link right here if you want to look at that if you haven't already. What's happening here is in the first few minutes of the film we have an unfolding of the relationship between our main character and his beloved wife. So we actually see over time this montage of what their relationship has been like and their dreams, their hopes, especially their hope of this amazing vacation and this amazing adventure that they want to go on. It's a story that ends their with her death and their separation. And there's a lot that really just touches us throughout. So if you want to take a few minutes to look over that, some of the things that might help you think about the way that stories get told is, okay, well, what draws us in most of all in this story? If you find this to be storytelling that really touches you emotionally, storytelling that sticks with you, one of the questions we can ask is, okay, well, how are they doing that? How are they doing that well? Why does this work so very well? So paying attention to how that story is told is a great strategy. I also want to leave you in this lecture with a writing exercise that you might find helpful. So if this is something you think would really help you a lot, that's fantastic. You're welcome to do it. If it doesn't sound like something that's going to help you, you're welcome to skip along and try another strategy. One of the things that's fantastic with creative writing is that there isn't one right way to do it, and you can try a lot of different things. A great idea is to just try a lot of different things and figure out what works for you in the moment that you're in right now. So the first thing that you can do with this is a writing exercise where you're really just going to jot down a few stories that have really touched you or stuck with you. So I gave on the last slide the example of Up as one that just really is a powerful story. And this could be different. What is really powerful for you, what stuck with you, and it might be different things. There, really one of the big things we see in Up is that emotional connection, and is that story that so many of us can just pour ourselves into. So you might think about a story from childhood that stuck with you, and it might be something that's fun and adventuresome. It might be something that is really touching. It might be something that is sad. You can also think of the last story, and it doesn't have to be one that made you tear up, but that's a great way to get thinking. If there's a story that made you tear up, that is because it was exercising some or another type of sticking power, stickiness we might think of it as. And so you can ask, okay, well, what was it about it that really touched you? What is it in the moment? And you can see how that moment is told too. So once you've got those couple jotted down, and you might even just jot down one or two, then what a great idea to do next is to analyze. What is it about this story? Why do you think you might have connected with it so deeply? And sometimes it might not be the best piece of art or really high art that you're connecting with, but if you are connecting with it, there's something there that's really interesting. It's something there that you perhaps can use in your own writing.